All right, what's up, guys? Happy Sunday night. I am so happy to be joined by my good friend Kyle Walton, my libertarian buddy. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. How are you, bud?
Doing good. And Christopher Souza, my liberal friend. How are you, man? How you doing?
Doing really well, enjoying the weekend.
Good, good, man. It's been what's it been now? 2, 3 weeks, I think, since we've been together and done this. I've missed you guys. I've missed having our back and forth and going through different topics. I see stuff online, I see stuff on the news, and I'm like, man, I can't wait to talk to these guys about it. But I got to tell you, I got the vaccine about a week ago, and I don't know if it was 50% the vaccine or 100% or not, but I have been down for about a week.
Mhm.
The past like 2 days, I started getting back, and now my entire family's sick. So I think it was a cold or something that was just brought on right afterwards. But man, that was rough for me. It felt a lot like getting COVID again. Not quite as bad, but it had me down. So I'm glad to have you guys back.
I've heard the side effects for people who have gotten COVID in the past are much worse compared to people who had not had COVID getting the vaccine. Because I got the vaccine and I felt no side effects whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I'm really sorry you had to go through that. But I'm
Yeah,
glad that you're vaccinated.
yeah. So
I
for
mean, the
me,
real the
it's,
real question is
yeah.
the real question is have you felt like a sudden urge to be buying Microsoft products and like spirit of Bill Gates or anything like that?
I feel more registered, you know. I feel
I
like
got you.
I'm
Yeah,
accounted
they're,
for.
they're tracking you, man. They tracking you.
I
Yeah.
feel like I'm being watched from time to time. It's weird. No, so for me, it was the Pfizer vaccine, and it was the first shot of it. So you're right, Chris. Like I've heard that too. That people who haven't had it, it's the second shot. People who have had it, it's the first. I don't know. I honestly don't know. And so at first I was like, this really feels like it was the vaccine because it was so similar to COVID. But then I got my wife sick, and I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure you can't transmit a non-live virus, but hey, I don't know. But now my kids have it, so we're pretty sure it's like hand, foot,
Mhm.
mouth or something like that, not the vaccine. But either way, it's been a week because you take the vaccine, you take getting COVID, all that stuff, and then we've had it in our extended family as well. So I'm just glad to start getting past all of this. So
Yeah.
it's great to see you guys. It's great to be able to do this show again. We've got so many good things coming on this show in the next few months that I can't wait to be sharing with
Okay.
people. We're starting to get into our segments, and we've got a heck of a segment tonight, so I can't wait to get into it. We've started doing our media moment on Refounding Fathers, and this is going to be our best one yet. I know it. So we've been talking about this for a while, and it's a good blend of leading thinkers as well as stuff that we've talked about before. So you guys are familiar, I know, with Jordan Peterson. Here's a picture of the guy. He is a conservative intellectual from Canada. I believe he's at the University of Toronto up there, or has
Yep.
been. This is a guy a lot of people know. He does videos, he's written books, he's done all of that stuff for years. A lot of people look up to him in the conservative movement, I can tell you that. And he is the subject of controversy right now. And here is why. So, thank you, Chris, for sending this to me. This is a picture of a recent comic book that came out that has Captain America and his arch nemesis, the Red Skull, which everybody knows from all the Captain America movies. I think he was in the last Avengers. He was on some like planet guarding a stone or something like that. Um, but it's interesting that in this comic, he's trying to influence the youth, and it was not lost on Jordan Peterson or anyone that what he's saying right there about chaos and order and the feminist trap, and I think it says 10 rules for life, is all eerily similar to everything that Jordan Peterson says and has written and has done talks on. And so that made it back to him. And I've got a video here we'll show a minute of Jordan Peterson reacting to discovering himself as the villain in a Marvel comic book.
What's the story with you and Red Skull?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I came across this last week, and someone tweeted me this cartoon, this comic, Captain America comic, and I saw this screenshot of Red Skull looking at a computer screen, and it said 10 rules for life. That was one text box. It said order and chaos, and there was a couple of other boxes, and I thought, well, that seems to be making a reference to my work. I mean, 10 rules for life is pretty close to 12 Rules for Life. And of course, the main themes I discuss are order and chaos. I mean, one book is about order and the other is about chaos. And my first book is about both. So as a joke, associating my ideas with this arch villain, magic super Nazi Red Skull. And then as I looked into it more deeply, and as people sent me more information, it became clear that at least some of the inspiration for this Red Skull character in this Captain America variant appeared to be targeting, let's say, or satirizing or warning about my ideas. And so I've been playing with that ever since, I suppose, on Twitter. People are producing memes now of Red Skull superimposed upon the picture of him, things I've actually said instead of the hypothetical things that the people who don't like me wish I said and then purposefully misinterpret. And so that's that. And I'm trying to make it into something playful. It's so
there you go. He goes on in the interview to talk about a little bit more, but here are some of the memes, and this is our media moment today. So I'm curious to get your reaction. So I know Kyle likes it. Go ahead, Kyle. What's your thought on this whole controversy of Jordan Peterson as the Red Skull?
Well, I think it's absurd. I do really like Peterson. I don't agree with a lot of what he says, actually, but I do think he's just a really compelling figure. And I really appreciate that a lot of his work has been studying order and chaos, and specifically about individualism. And I know much of his work is about taking responsibility for yourself, being the best person you can be. And that's right. And as you become a better person, that leads to better societies, better communities, that sort of thing. He studied pretty extensively the work of like totalitarianism, especially the totalitarianism of the left. And so it's no surprise to me that someone like Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is so steeped in the Marxism of today, would take someone like Jordan Peterson, whose whole message is individual responsibility and anti-authoritarianism. I mean, Jordan Peterson is himself the ideal classical liberal, so it's no secret that someone steeped in the cultural Marxism of today would take shots at someone like Peterson.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Chris is probably not as big of a fan of Jordan Peterson.
Probably so.
Conservative. Is this how you see him with the villain-esque ambiance?
No. So I agree that Jordan Peterson is not Nazi, nor is he like a Hydra agent like the Red Skull. I think to call him those things attributes a greater level of coherence to his philosophy than Jordan Peterson actually has. I do think he's a really weird dude. I think this advice, clean your room and be responsible, is pretty anodyne and non-controversial. But Jordan Peterson reminds me of nothing so much as that scene from Parks and Recreation where they're kind of satirizing Scientology. Yeah. And they've got that author releasing the book, Organize It is his book. And it's all about just self-help and being organized. And then he releases Organize It 2, Engage with Zorp. And he loses his mind. And this is what the trajectory of Jordan Peterson has resembled to me, is that he started out as actually a very respected philosopher. And it seemed like as long as he kind of stayed in his lane, he was very well respected, but not terribly controversial, and didn't really engage in the culture war. And then once he started doing that, he really tended to get, I think, a little bit sloppier with his analysis. Definitely. He started coming up with some very weird theories about whether men and women could work together, weird theories about sexual harassment. He started going on this all red meat diet. And, he's recently woken up from a coma, which I don't know if that was related to the all red meat diet. If so, unfortunate that he had to wake up to this. But at the same time, I don't think the message here is that Jordan Peterson is a Nazi or Jordan Peterson is evil. I think the issue is more about this kind of insidious nature of social media, and kind of slippery slope that many men, especially white men, can tend to go on toward radicalization. And this was something that was highlighted really well in The Social Dilemma, a documentary on Netflix. And it can start with very anodyne stuff. But I think what they point out in those blurbs from that panel that you showed are that these bits of like anodyne seeming advice, but mixed in with some very like grievance politics driven stuff and some like kind of like white male identity politics stuff. And there is like Jordan Peterson is not alt-right, but there is a Jordan Peterson to alt-right pipeline that I think is pretty well documented. And so I think that is really the message here. And this is about Red Skull like branching out and doing things more insidiously and not being cartoonishly over the top evil in his message. So I think for me, the joke worked. For me, it was very funny. Although if I were Jordan Peterson, of course, I probably would not find it very funny to be compared to the Red Skull.
But see, that's the thing he did. And to me, the joke is on the left, right? Is because he took it and then he made the most of it. And then he's having fun with all of this stuff. I mean, as you can see, he's very aware of the memes and playing into that. He's posted several times on his Twitter about this and just kind of like owning it. And of course, he being the most soft-spoken guy that he is, as you saw in that clip, like it makes it more ridiculous. And so to me, the joke is on the left because anytime they do this and the person just owns it and has fun with it, is the topic now, right? Like now Jordan Peterson is getting all these more clicks and followers and people are talking about him. Now he's, in the media, we're talking about him and we wouldn't have been otherwise. I think of Dan Crenshaw, the same type of story where, yeah, he was kind of an up and coming guy, sort of. And then Saturday Night Live tried to attack him. Right. And then before you know it, he was practically a household name and he's been there ever since. And so when they go too far in attacking these people to this point, if it's sort of get into a comic book, all of a sudden now, like, the right knows how to live into this demonization whenever people attack us and just spin it back. Now you're wondering, why did they even do this to begin with, right? So to me, I think he did a great job with that, of being able to turn into it.
Yeah, he's even leaned into this and is actually starting to sell some merchandise. He's,
right.
If you're familiar with his whole like first chapter of his first book or second book, 12 Rules for Life, he talks about like hierarchical structures and things like that. Mentions the lobsters, and so lobsters are often associated with him. And so now he's actually got the Hydra logo, the Hail Hydra logo, but it's a lobster. It says Hail Lobster on it. So this guy just leaned into it full tilt. And I think it's really funny. So
that's great. So, it's interesting seeing politics, as well as media at the same time being together. And, it makes you look at it differently because now, like, hey, is that what they're going for? There's so many times that politics does creep into like Marvel comic books or DC or whatever. But I'm of the mindset this is exactly how you handle it. I think it's a little bit ridiculous to try to satirize him that way. But hey, if that's what the left wants to do, they can knock themselves out. They have enough problems. We're going to get into our main topic tonight when it comes to guns and immigration. And this is going to be a big series that we're probably going to be focused on for the next month. And it's going to be interesting because, we've started to tackle some of the big topics on this show. And we've done abortion, and I thought that was fantastic, honestly, because it's such a tough topic to bring up, not easy to discuss, and yet I thought we did a great job being able to find some common ground in that, in places where we can agree, and a future that we would all like to be in more than today on that issue. And now I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on these two big issues because they're so big in the Biden administration now. There's a lot of controversy with Biden's stance on gun control, and then particularly right now, his stance on immigration. So that's where we're going to start with immigration tonight. And just to kind of frame it for folks, this is his current approval rating that I just pulled up today. And you see Biden's approval on the issues with coronavirus is very high. With the economy, he's still got a very, very slim majority, but that's fairly high. But immigration, he's tanking. And this is not just, obviously, conservatives or middle-of-the-road folks. He's also had a lot of trouble on the left with a lot of backlash from progressives. He said things like, the immigration numbers are normal, but he's been fact-checked by Washington Post and others that are typically more left-leaning. That blue line right there, that is October through March of the numbers of immigration, you see his administration there starting in January and February, how the number of border encounters of immigrants coming in is spiking. Those other lines are different years or past years, and so you can see how those numbers are not the same. And then there's this question of the refugee cap, and he's had to completely backtrack on that and flip on that in just the past few days. So, talk to me about this, Chris, because there are some members of the left who have been attacking the Biden administration and staying true to their own ideals. There's been some that are saying, it's still not as bad as what we would have had with Trump, in their opinion, and are trying to defend him. Where do you stand on that?
They're both right. I mean,
Okay.
Biden is definitely, in some ways, kind of stuck in the early 2000s as a person, as an individual, when it comes to many aspects of policy. And I think immigration is one of them. At the same time, I am happy to see that over the last few days, as you said, he has been pushed by the left into adopting a slightly more generous refugee plan. Although it is troubling that his first instinct was to propose such a, in my view, ridiculous cap. I do think that the latter group, as you mentioned, is absolutely right that Biden's immigration policy is much more generous than Trump's. I don't like the view that there's some kind of moral equivalence between the two, especially as Trump ran on the idea of making much harsher immigration policy than his Democratic predecessor, and then he did so.
Right.
And then a lot of his supporters, instead of admitting that they were thrilled that he did so, instead went back and said, "Oh well, Obama did the same thing. Oh well, these were Obama's cage. Obama put kids in cages too." When the whole point of the Trump administration, according to his 2016 campaign, was to be tougher on immigrants and treat them worse so that fewer would come here. So I found that a little bit disingenuous, and I find it a little bit disingenuous when it comes to the equivalence between Trump and Biden as well. However, if those kind of comparisons are what push Biden to be more progressive on this issue and to really allow more immigrants in and treat this as the humanitarian crisis that it is, then more power to those people, I say. And it is a crisis. The spikes in immigration we are seeing is a crisis, and I think it's wrong for Democrats to deny that.
Yeah.
But I think Republicans tend to focus on it as a crisis that could lead to crime, a crisis about our borders, when really it is a humanitarian crisis and should be treated as such.
Your thoughts, Kyle?
Yeah, when I saw the headline, I guess it was Washington Post ran a headline this past week talking about how the Biden administration was set to accept less immigrants than any president in modern history, including Donald Trump. I thought that was a pretty absurd thing for the administration to claim, especially since so many of the administration have used such inflammatory rhetoric to talk about Trump and the administration, from racist to xenophobic to any other name under the sun. I think Chris is right. I mean, as a libertarian, I tend to probably have a little more liberal view on immigration. I think that we should be welcoming really as many people as we can, so long as there are people who will contribute and things like that. And if there's a refugee problem, let's open up our borders and see what we can do to help those who are truly in need. That being said, there's a lot of things happening at the border right now that are that are out of control right now. Like, so people coming in through some of these points right now are being welcomed in with no COVID restrictions. Right. People on the left are screaming bloody murder about some guy not wearing his mask out in public, even though he's had a vaccine, yet are eager to welcome thousands of people crossing the border daily with no COVID tests, no COVID backgrounds or anything like that. Human trafficking is a huge issue down at the border. Upwards of 36% is something I saw this week. 36% of women who are coming across the border illegally could be victims of human trafficking, including many children. And so there's a lot of issues that we really have to consider when we're talking about these issues. So for me, I guess the most frustrating thing is the hypocrisy of it all. When the media was lambasting Trump for kids in cages, you had AOC and her group go down to the border dressed in all white, crying, fake crying for the camera for all these photo ops and things like that. And of course, the media ate it up. And now that you have the same situation under Biden, of course, we're not seeing that. But we are seeing people like Ted Cruz pretend to care now as well. So there's definitely hypocrisy on both sides of this.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just let you respond to that, Chris, because I mean that's a pretty strong accusation. I would support it in some ways, but I'll let you respond to this notion that it's not okay when Trump does it, but if a Democrat does it, then it's fine, right?
Well, it's not an identical policy. I think there is a difference in degree. The kids in cages meme under Trump was about the family separation policy, which was new and which was implemented by Jeff Sessions. The child migrant crisis under Obama were unaccompanied minors, and that seems to be the case under Biden as well. It's still a horrible situation. The way that our country has treated immigrants has pretty much always been terrible. I don't think anyone's denying that. And we saw, the same progressive wing, AOC and others, were the ones really behind this push to get Biden to raise the refugee cap. So there is some hypocrisy. I agree with that. But I do think the idea that Trump was much worse on immigration had a lot of merit to it and was something that the Trump administration actively promoted. Now, I also believe that human trafficking is a huge problem. The cartels are a huge problem. I think if we spent fewer resources, trying to deport old ladies and people who are working for a living, who may have come here illegally, we would have more resources to focus on the traffickers. We could even de-incentivize the trafficking. It's like prohibition. The mob grew into a huge thing under alcohol prohibition. Moonshining became a whole new profession under alcohol prohibition. Once that was removed and things were legalized, we saw that situation improve a little bit. I think the same is true with these human traffickers who are trafficking women because they don't see any other way to get to the United States in many cases. I mean, of course, you have kidnap victims and other things like that as well. But there are, these coyotes who take advantage of people who are desperate and then treat them absolutely horribly. This is not victim blaming in any way. This is saying that if those people had an easier way to come into this country legally, then maybe that would take away some of the power of these horrible opportunists who are committing these evil crimes all over the border.
So can I ask you a question, Chris?
Yes.
How many immigrants should America accept? I mean, I guess that's right. So we accept anyone at any point who wants to come to America. I'm very sympathetic to people who want to come here. I was having a conversation the other day, and I was saying, man, if I didn't live here, because I love this country, I think this is the best country in the world. If I didn't live here and I thought that I could do better for my family here, I would come here. I would break every law it took for me to try to come to this country. So, I'm someone who is sympathetic, but also someone who understands that a nation has to have borders, and we have to have security and things like that at the same time. Like, for me, there's some conflict there. So how does that work out for you?
I don't think that we are anywhere close to needing to look at a specific number, because we are nowhere close to taking in what the upper limit of possible immigrants would be. And I don't even know if we could reach that, given the amount of people who would prefer to stay in their home countries or who can't travel for other reasons. I don't think that question is a very necessarily illuminating one, because we're not full. Like, we have plenty of empty land. We've got plenty of empty houses. We've got plenty of people who, most of these immigrants who come into the U.S. illegally, they already have places that they're going. They're not coming in and, taking someone's home. They have somewhere that they are going, people who have agreed to allow them to live there. I do think we need a screening process. I think that screening process would be easier if we did not artificially keep a whole class of people out without this just incredibly insane bureaucratic system designed to limit the number of immigrants to a degree that is lower than what we would actually benefit our economy.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll have to leave it there because we're running short on time. But as you can see, this is going to be multiple episodes going through these different issues. I would simply say that when you look at Trump and what he did, yes, there may be a direction that many people disagree with, but it was a very clear direction, and I think people were shocked at how much he actually pursued it. People thought it was just campaign speech, but then it was some of the first things that he did was limiting immigration and pushing back on which countries people could immigrate from, or even as refugees could come from. And he continued to do that to varying degrees of success throughout his administration, but he was always kind of steadfast in his beliefs. And I think with Biden, it's going to be very interesting because this whole kind of back and forth, right? In some ways, I think is worse than if he had already started out in a far left direction and stuck to it. Now it looks like he's just kind of up to whatever people happen to say. The whole, flipping on the cap and things like that. It's going to appear as indecisive leadership, which is exactly what Republicans were predicting if Biden became president, and it sets the stage up for them in future elections to be able to say, hey, maybe not everybody agrees with our direction, but at least it's a direction and we're going to stick to it. And that's the argument that is being formulated, I'm sure, in Republican circles right now. So we'll get into more of the ethics of it, more of the morality of it. I really appreciate your perspectives on this. If you've got comments for Chris or Kyle or myself on this issue, we're going to be talking about immigration for the next several weeks. We're going to bring in gun control as well as the Biden administration takes actions on this. If you've got more data, facts, and figures you want us to wrestle with, we're happy to do that. I do want to thank these guys. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Kyle, for being on the show. We're going to have our Conservatism on Tap show is coming up next. So give us about 5 minutes to reset for that. But for you guys, thanks again for being on the show. As always, I appreciate your perspectives on this. Any last words, Kyle, before I let you go for tonight?
No, just that I've been working on a Tinder profile. I'm excited to get back on there, and I'm thinking about shaving my. Let me explain. If I don't have my beard, I look a little bit like a lesbian. It just is what it is. I look like a butch lesbian. I have a picture to prove it, and so I'm thinking I might be able to catfish like Rachel Maddow into giving me some, incriminating evidence, like Veritas style or something like that. So
I want to see you take a Marvel villain and like superimpose your face on it. That's what we need. That's what
Done, man. We'll do it.
Thank you, man, for being on the show. And Chris, thank you as well.
Always.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great night, guys. We'll be back on in 5 minutes with Conservative.